Hello guys, welcome back. So far we've been discussing about some of the basics of Java. We talked about how to write a simple Java class, and we discussed about how to compile and run a program, right? So you got a little bit feel about what it looks like writing a Java program, right? So today we're gonna get into the real concepts of Java. Okay, so Java is called object oriented programming language. So what it means is the language itself is all about dealing with objects, right? So what exactly is object, right? So before we get into object, like I mentioned, we usually refer these as a oops concepts, right? So before you get into writing main Java applications or any programs in Java, you need to have a clear understanding of object oriented programming concepts, which we refer to as oops concepts. Okay, so those concepts are the main pillars of Java. So if you don't have clear understanding of those concepts, it is very difficult for you to run with the language. So you will do mistakes and you will not be able to create new programs or create new applications. You won't be able to take advantage of language. So it is pretty much like you're talking in English or Telugu or Hindi, any language. If you don't know the basic alphabets of or how to write sentences, right, you cannot talk, right? The same concept applies here as well. If you don't know oops concepts, you cannot write programs in Java. Okay, so today we're gonna start with object. Object is a key concept in one of the key concepts in oops. Okay, so what is object? So before we get into the software terminology of object, let's talk about the real world objects, right? If you see like around you in day-to-day life, you come across lots of objects. You are already dealing with objects, right? Let's apply that knowledge into software, right? So if you take an example here, couple of objects. Person is an object. Car is an object, right? You interact with a person, right? So a person has, like you see the common terms here. A person will have properties, right, which we usually refer them as a state in the software terminology. So here the properties are state. Person has a name, age. For simplicity, I just took a couple of them as an example. Right, they can have many properties, right? They can their height, their address, their hobbies. So all that we refer that as a state. And what kind of behaviors a person can have? So they can have lots of behaviors. So they can sing, they can play, right? Uh, they can drive, they can go do lots of stuff, right? So let's apply the same thing to car. What uh, what kind of what possible state can properties can have car can have, right? Possible properties. So here it can have car name, what is the company that car is manufactured, and the color of the car, right? And what kind of behaviors car can have. Car can accelerate, so you are basically car, you can change gears, right? They're all kind of behaviors, right? So if you see the common terms here, every object in the real world, every object can have this both state and behavior, right? So that is the real world. Real world, that's how you are seeing the objects. So for you to think in terms of objects, always when you see something around you, try to figure out, okay, what are the properties does this object can have, and then try to think like, okay, what are the possible behaviors that object could have, right? So that way you know how to represent any real world object into software object. So the software object, now let's get into the software terminology of object. A software object is a software piece, it's a bundle that represent a real world object. So for example, if you want to write a program about person, right? Person is running 1 kilometer per hour, right? Let's say that is, you want to represent that action into program, right? You see the person is really running on the road, right? You want to write an application to represent that action, you want to write a program for that. First, what you would do is, you need to know how you can represent a real world person into software object, right? So that's when you create this object like this circle. Always imagine object as a circle, and then in the circle you have properties and behavior, they are methods, right? So if you think that way, what you would do, you would create this circle, and then okay, now you represented person, right? Now person is running, so how do you represent that? That is one of the behaviors. You will just put run method here. So a person with a name Narsi and age 22, and then you say run, right? So what you need to take from this discussion is, you always represent a real world object into software object. So what is software object? Software object is a bundle, a piece of entity or piece of software bundle. You can think of that way. But what is bundle actually? It is a piece, right, which is covered together, right? You can represent that way. So a software object is a bundle that has that carries both state and behavior, right? So since the object is always going to carry state and behavior together, right? Then in the software world, you can pass this object anywhere you want. You can pass this object around. So for example, you have a person object with the name Narsi and age 22, and this person can sing and play. So these are the behaviors of this person object. Then some program is running, and if you pass this object to that program can use this object as it is, and it can call this sing method, and this a person will sing, and when we call play, person will play. So that's how you interact with the object. You interact with these behaviors, and through these methods, this state, the properties of the object will change. So what I mean by that is, you will never interact directly. So let's say there is a software program, right? There is a software program here, and this object is being passed to this program, okay? So since it got this object, the software object, which has this state and behavior, and it wants to display the name of the person. So what it should do, it should call one of the methods here. So ideally you will have get name method here, right? So get name method. So what this get name method will do, it will interact with this name property, and then it will give it back. So you always interact with the object through these behavioral methods, and these methods are the only ones which will talk to these properties. You can never talk to these properties directly, right? That is encapsulated. That is what is called encapsulation actually. So you will get into that concept later. But that's one of the, because that term has come now, like, let me explain that. So that's one of the OOPS concepts, which is encapsulation. What it means is, object has state, right? Nobody can mess up with the state directly. Always they interact with the state through these methods, so that you don't have to deal with like what are all the state variables that is defined, and how they are defined, how they are computed. You wouldn't worry about it, right? So for example, in this case, if you look at the real world car object, you change gears, right? Did you ever really look into how the gears are changing underneath? Never, right? We don't know, it's all covered. That's called encapsulation. It's encapsulated. The behavior itself, which is messing up with the gears here, that is encapsulated. So you will never interact with them directly. So you always talk through these behavioral methods. So that's how you interact with objects. So with this concept, if you want to represent some real world object, right, what would you do? First, let's say you see there is a light, right? When you look at the light, okay, how do I represent light in software world? First thought that you should think about is, okay, if light is a real object, what are all the properties of the light? Color of the light, how much brightness of the light, right? And then there are all possible properties of the light, right? And what could be the behaviors of light? You can turn on, turn off. They're all the behaviors of the light. So that's how you should think. And then you would put that in this circle form, and then you write those properties and then methods. So that's all about object. I think this much understanding is good enough for now. And when you put them into the real programming world, you will be able to relate these terms. But for now, let's pause here with this basic concept. Then when you get into the next concept of whoops, then you'll connect. Okay. So to summarize, object, software object is one-to-one relation with the real world object. An object comprises of state and behavior. The both will always go together. So object will carry state and behavior. You can pass the object around software applications. Within the application, you can pass the object around anywhere you want. Anybody can consume the object. Any program can consume the object and interact with the object. How do you interact the object? You will interact with the object through methods, and you always talk to the state through behavior, which are methods. Okay. So in the next video, let's talk about how to one of the next important concepts of whoops, and then we'll take it from there. All right. See you guys. Thank you.